Hello everyone, welcome to Durar for Africa. Today we are diving deep into a critical situation unfolding in the Horn of Africa that's sending shockwaves across the region and beyond. In this comprehensive video, we'll be exploring the escalating tensions between Somalia, Ethiopia and Egypt and how recent developments are reshaping the geopolitical landscape of East Africa. Here's what we'll be covering in today's extended episode. The latest development, Egypt's recent military aid to Somalia, including details on the weapons delivery and its significance. The background, Ethiopia's deal with Somaliland for port access and its implications. The complex web of regional rivalries, including the ongoing dispute over the Nile River. The potential deployment of Egyptian troops in Somalia and its impact on regional stability. The broader implications for the balance of power in the Horn of Africa. The role of other international players in the region, including Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and UAE. Expert analysis on motivations behind these actions and potential outcomes. Whether you're a long-term follower of African politics or just starting to explore the complexities of this dynamic continent, this video will provide you with a comprehensive understanding of a situation that could reshape the future of East Africa. So grab your notepads and get ready for an informative journey through the geopolitics of the Horn of Africa. Let's dive in and unpack these crucial developments together.
When on August 27th, two Egyptian military planes landed in Somalia's capital, it ruffled feathers 1,000 kilometers away in Addis Ababa. The planes, delivering military aid, marked Egypt's first significant military engagement in Somalia in decades.
Somalia receives a lot of military equipment and donations. This one is significant just because it's coming specifically from Egypt and the timing of it. It came at a time where there's heightened tensions between Somalia and Ethiopia.
So why is Egypt doing this, and why is Ethiopia particularly concerned? Could it become more than a war of words? Ethiopia, a landlocked country, has long sought access to a seaport to boost its trade and military capabilities. Earlier in 2024, Ethiopia struck a deal with Somaliland, a self-declared independent region that broke away from Somalia over 30 years ago, but isn't internationally recognized.
So essentially, that deal was a swap of port access, sea access for Ethiopia on the Somaliland coast, and in return, Ethiopia would recognize Somaliland. And so Somalia sees that as an affront to its sovereignty.
In response, Somalia has sought to strengthen its ties with Egypt, a longtime rival of Ethiopia, particularly over control of the Nile waters. And now, as we mentioned at the start, Egyptian military aid is arriving in Mogadishu. So why is Ethiopia nervous about this move?
I think it does alarm Ethiopia a bit, just as the MOU with Somaliland alarms Somalia a bit. And so the problem is everyone's trying to outdo each other and get the upper hand, and you have these tit-for-tat sort of escalatory dynamics. So I do think it raises some concern in Addis.
The stakes are high, but is there more at play? The Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, Ethiopia's biggest infrastructure project, which they see as crucial for its economic development, providing much needed electricity and fostering growth. However, further down the Nile, it's been seen as a point of contention.
The River Nile is really important to Egypt because it has been the source of its economic sovereignty. Activity along the Nile is really what makes Egypt it's an economic powerhouse, whether it's tourism, whether it's agriculture. The filling up of the dam has been one controversial issue. The talks around that have never succeeded. And so for Egypt to be welcomed into Somalia, Ethiopia feels, I would say, marooned on both ends by Egypt.
Adding to the mix, there are discussions about deploying up to 10,000 Egyptian soldiers as part of the African Union peacekeeping mission in Somalia, with some possibly being stationed in Somaliland. This development is making Ethiopia nervous.
On paper, the two countries could exist in a mission if everything was okay. But at this moment, the tensions around Somalia not wanting Ethiopia to be part of the AU mission, Egypt and Ethiopia's internal tensions, I think it would be very, very tricky to have them both here, both in Somalia, and would really externalize the conflict that they're having in their country and have it in Somalia.
But it's not just about Egypt and Ethiopia. The Horn of Africa is a strategically significant region, drawing in other powerful players. Saudi Arabia, the UAE and Turkey all have significant interests here, particularly because of its location along the Red Sea, a vital global trade route.
External actors can very much play a role where they aggravate existing tensions, and we've seen this before historically. At the same time, outside actors can also play an important mediating role and in sort of a conflict reducing role when that's done right. So we've seen Turkey take up the mediation right now between Ethiopia and Somalia. No real breakthroughs yet, but continuing down that path.
So where does this leave us? The situation in the Horn of Africa is delicate and could escalate if diplomatic efforts don't succeed. With multiple players involved and interests at stake, the region remains on edge.
Where an already widening rift between Somalia and Ethiopia has worsened, with Egypt picking sides. In the latest, Cairo has delivered more weapons to Somalia, a move that is further likely to worsen the conflict with Ethiopia. An Egyptian ship delivered a significant consignment of military equipment to Somalia on Monday. As per reports, the weapons include anti-aircraft guns and artillery. Somali Defense Minister thanked Egypt in a social media post. The minister was himself present at the port during the delivery and was overseeing the offloading of arms. He said Somalia has passed the stage where they were dictated to, and now they will choose their enemies and allies themselves. Egyptian Foreign Ministry said the shipment reaffirms the country's ongoing central role in supporting the Somali military. Meanwhile, Somalia's breakaway region, Somaliland, has been alarmed by Egypt's military aid to Somalia. Its foreign ministry, in a statement, said that it is concerned that the weapons could land in the wrong hands, including those of terrorists. Now, this is the second such delivery from Egypt to Somalia, as ties deteriorate with their mutual rival Ethiopia. Tensions erupted after Ethiopia signed a deal with Somaliland to gain access to its port and coastline to build a naval base. In exchange, it agreed to become the first nation to officially recognize Somaliland. But Somalia called this deal an attack on its sovereignty. Egypt, which is at odds with Ethiopia over a dam on the Nile River, has forged close ties with Somalia amidst the mutual mistrust. Cairo has also offered to deploy its troops in Somalia that can potentially replace the Ethiopian troops that are stationed in the country fighting al-Shabaab terrorists. In further signs of strains, Egypt on Sunday asked all of its nationals in Somaliland to leave the region urgently, citing security concerns. Now, this followed a decision by Somaliland to shut an Egyptian cultural center in its capital last week. It also asked all of its staff to leave the territory. The Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed earlier warned the rivals against invasion, which he said will trigger strong retaliation. Somalia's close ally, Turkey, has been mediating talks between the neighbors Ethiopia and Somalia. So far, they have not resulted in a breakthrough. Will Cairo's military aid to Mogadishu complicate the peace efforts? Now, for more on this, we have with us Shadwa Zaher, a global affairs analyst who is joining us live from Cairo, Egypt. Thank you for being with us.
Hello, Alison. Thank you for having me. And thank you for this report. It's very comprehensive.
Great to have you on the show. Now, what are the strategic motivations behind Egypt's decision to send arms to Somalia, and how does this align with the broader regional interests?
Yeah, that's a great question, actually, because Somalia and Egypt has always had this long-term strategic relationship. And when Somalia requested more military support over its borders, Egypt sought to help. This is for two reasons. The first reason would be basically to ensure securing the maritime routes through the Red Sea, and the existence of these shipments or troops along the southern flank is a normal thing. It's basically of the geopolitical extension of the Egyptian existence in this area. And it's also securing the international trade within, especially because this is considered to be a southern gate to the Suez Canal. So sending troops, assisting Somalia, because it's a strategic relationship and a strategic partner in Africa region, is part of ensuring that the development and the economic and the trade process is working in its normal path. So I don't think Egypt is seeking to heighten or trying to heighten any tensions in the region, and not replying to the request of Somalia would have been weird, to be honest.
And how might this arms shipment impact the balance of power in the Horn of Africa region, particularly in relation to Ethiopia and the ongoing tensions over the Nile River?
Yeah, I think this is actually making sure that the balance of power is still in its place, because Egypt's national security is simply part of the African security, and vice versa, including the Ethiopian security. So the intrusion of the Egyptian-Ethiopian relationship in this relation with Somalia basically is adding a layer of strategic competition that is not really relevant in this case. So the matter here is basically about maintaining national security along the maritime route and the Red Sea international trade. This is in favor of everyone, in favor of Egypt, in favor of Ethiopia, in favor of Somalia, and in favor of the international community as well. Anyone who's interested in the African, dealing with Africa in terms of trade, in terms of development, especially with all the national plans, the developmental national plans that all the African countries are seeking nowadays, from Europe, from the US, even as you said in your report. So coexisting together and maintaining the national security by sending troops to avoid any potential threats is basically making sure that the balance of power is in place.
Yes. And I just want to touch on another factor there. What are the potential risks and benefits for Somalia in receiving this military aid, especially considering the presence of the extremist groups like Al-Shabaab, for example?
Yeah, bringing Al-Shabaab in the scenario is really very, very important, because Egypt has long history of dealing with such kind of groups that are Islamic groups with Islamic backgrounds. So Egypt understands where do they come from. So having Egyptian military support along the borders of Somalia will make sure that Al-Shabaab are in their places, and maybe will actually tighten the gap between the Somalis and Al-Shabaab, and maybe things will work to their favor. So this could be one of the benefits that maybe Somalia thought of when it asked for the military support by the Egyptian troops. One other benefit, as I've said, is basically maintaining international security along the African region and protecting international trade.
And Shadwa, how do you foresee the international community, including the African Union and the neighboring countries, responding to Egypt's military support for Somalia?
I think this move actually, in my opinion, aligns very well with the strategic goals of the African Union. Because the African Union mission in Somalia has always been seeking peacemaking, okay? So sending or supporting each other military is part of the strategic relationship that has always been there between most of the African countries. So the role of the international community will basically should see this as one good move in strengthening relationship between countries in Africa, but also making sure that peacemaking process is still working to the favor of everyone.
Shadwa, thank you very much for being with us on First Post Africa and for your valued analysis and insights on the latest coming out of Africa.